We hope that we have some valuable information to share with you, some strategies that maybe you can try in your classroom. One of the modules we gave you in Talent LMS 2, actually, one was called the classroom environment, and one was the first 2 weeks of school. And we put those in there strategically because we really believe if you set up your classroom environment correctly, if you really intentionalize the first 2 weeks of school, you're going to set yourself up for success for an entire year. And so I'm not by myself for this presentation. You will notice I have somebody else with me as well. This is the wonderful Pat Morgan. She has been an educator success coach for Global for 5 years. She works all over the place.
I look good for 100.
Right. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's a principal, teacher, coach. She's pretty much done it all. She is a success coach in Guilford, Chatham, now Durham as well. So you might be getting to know her very soon. If you are in her cohort, I'm sure you'll be meeting with her tomorrow afternoon as well. But since our coaches play such a large role in going in and out of your classrooms, these are some of the things they'll be looking for. Not to evaluate you, remember we are not evaluatory, but we can see when it's maybe not working, and we can maybe advise some things to help it to get it working. Because if your classroom's not kind of functioning in the right way, it's a bit chaotic, right? And things will just not probably work out the way that you want them to work out. So hopefully in this session, we will plan to tell you a little bit more about what is the concept of classroom environment, just kind of point out some of the ways you can make your environment a really conducive place, to learn. We want to examine the role of the classroom environment, how it supports student success, and creates a productive school year. We want to look a little bit at classroom management. In our experience, classroom management is one of the biggest cultural adjustments for many of our teachers. I do know for some of you, you are used to the fact that your students just automatically give you respect. I hate to break your heart, but in the US, that is not always the case. It is something that most likely needs to be earned, and that you develop that mutually together. We'll talk a little bit more about that and how you can build relationships with your students to start to get that moving. And then one thing that we really encourage is you to pour some intentional time into being proactive in building up routines, expectations you expect in your class, how to develop that positive classroom culture, because you're going to hear your coaches talk about that a lot, and if they come into your classrooms and that piece is kind of missing, there's no rules, there's no routines, they're going to be in your ear telling you to do that, because kids will just make up their own rules if you don't have any, and they'll just do their own thing if you don't set those boundaries right from day one. And so we don't want them to be the leaders of the ship. That's your job. So we want to make sure that they know from day one that you are the person that's in control in your classroom.
Welcome. It's so good to see everybody here. Glad to see there's a big group here from Durham. I've got about 5 or 6, and Tina, Mashburn, and Mallory have worked coaches before, and so they're going to let me help them out a little bit, so I'm looking forward to meeting you personally. I'm going to be honest with you. I know you've listened to so much stuff yesterday and today, and Ricky, we thank you for paying them to listen to yours. Well, we have no money to do a home. That's okay. The number one reason people leave teaching in America and all over the world, and our global teachers, the number one thing that they will tell you that the hardest thing they deal with is classroom management. And I really want to emphasize that what I'm telling you today, the good thing about getting old, let me tell you a good thing about getting old. Good thing about getting old is I have seen it done since 1975. Now picture that. And I'm telling you, the pendulum swung this way, then swung this way. That's the hippie parents over here. It swung that way. And now it's not back in the middle yet. But guess what? 50 years ago, a lady named Lucille Stone, she was my teacher at college, Elon University, and she said, there's one thing and one thing only that will help you be a successful teacher. And that is, you gotta pay attention to what the room looks like, and you gotta build a relationship with the students. And you know what, for a while, I didn't believe her. I was pretty sure I knew more about it than she did. Well, as I went on, I felt like I needed to call every child I taught for about the first 2 years and just apologize. Because I would raise my voice, you better sit down right now and tell them. Well, that got me nowhere. Except I lost, my voice changed, but I have a low voice. But, so I hope you'll listen carefully to what we want to share with you this afternoon. And I know all of you watched all those videos you were supposed to. If you did, raise your hand. Don't lie if you did, it's all right. It's okay. Let me tell you something.
If you watched all the Talon Elements videos,
Let-
you should all
Let me tell you something. I thought, to be honest with you, as the coaches, we haven't seen a ball. And I thought, those people ain't got time to look at all that stuff. You know what? I've been looking at them, and that tell me if they aren't good. So one I watched today is called Strategies for Challenging Behaviors. If you haven't watched that one, you write that one down and you make sure you watch it. Because if I'd seen it years ago, I'd be in a lot better shape. So, enough of the preaching. There's two, you didn't know I was preaching, but no, I'm not, believe me. In your thing in the middle of the table, you've got index cards. Get 2 index cards if you would, and I'm going to ask you. Right, okay, let's stop. I know you could probably spend a little bit more time on that, but we want to make sure we cover some other things for you today. Will somebody read me their definition for classroom environment? Anybody share? But don't be shy. You've come halfway around the world, you can read a definition.
Alright, so for my classroom environment, actually I just done the first one. So for my classroom environment is the physical appearance where teaching learning process occurs. So these include blackboard, chairs, teachers, and students.
Very good, very good. Classroom environment, and Amy put the slide up there. Classroom environment is actually the setting, the setting. Now, one thing I want to tell you, I'm a pretty practical person. And so as a coach, if I come in your room and we're not evaluating, Lord knows, I don't know how you teach, believe me, I know, I'm not evaluating. Oh, I'm sorry, can't hear me? Oh my goodness. You don't, if you have your classroom in rows and it's not working, kids aren't involved in the lesson, they're talking to each other, they got their head on the desk, they're just totally bored out of their mind. If you do that, change the room arrangement. A lot of people just freeze and say, no, I can't do it. Listen, put your kids in small group settings, make a circle, make a broken circle, make it look like a star. It's all kinds of ways, and the good thing you have advantage for you is you can go on the internet and find examples of everything. And now with AI, let me tell you, I'm still trying to get a hold of that beast, but you know, really and truly, you got such resources there. So don't let your room be very boring. How many people are, I shouldn't say this, but how many people are teaching middle and high school? Okay, that means middle and high school too. Sometimes I go into no offense, not your classroom at all, I just think it's not. But you go in and there's nothing on the walls, there's no student work, there's nothing. Those kids want to be recognized too. They really do. In fact, they're probably the neediest. The elementary kids will just tell you what they need. But so make your room attractive, make it somewhere you want to go. I mean, this hotel's pretty nice. When I walk by those big shiny things out there in the hall, I thought, well, you know, they put us up pretty good, you know. But because I've been to the other orientation, so this hotel's nicer, and it made me feel better because it's so much nicer. Same thing for your classroom. Same thing for your classroom. The key components are listed there. You can read them. I'm not going to read it to you. I just want to emphasize the importance of the environment. I want to tell you one other thing. If I could just say one more thing before we move on and stop. I'm supposed to tell this. Well, I saw something today, and I've done this before. Start the year off by asking your kids to make a social contract. Have you ever heard of that before?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Have you used it? Have you been able to use it? No, but you can't. That's right. The 4 questions you ask them. What? How do you think? How do you think you should treat me? How do you think I should treat you? How do you think you should treat each other? And what are we going to do when people don't follow those rules? And you have a discussion. You take a whole class period. You let them write those words down, and you make a social contract. And those kids, I'm telling you, that will set the environment for you. So, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm all excited, but okay, yes.
So
But try
environment is
that. I think it's
definitely
great.
part one of it, and as Pat said, it's gonna take you a little moment or two to figure out what's gonna work for you. And so I have seen many, many teachers who arrive at their school and your classroom is already set up in a way, and you're too afraid to change it because you think someone set it up that way on purpose. I can tell you right now, it is most likely just the way that the custodians put the desks back into the room after they cleaned the floors over the summer. So don't be afraid to change it to what works for you. I have learned the hard way about just thinking one arrangement is the only arrangement and it not working. I used to take children who were maybe more difficult and I thought, I'll put them closer to the board so that they can see me better. But you know what happened when they were at the front of the room? They literally then were able to turn around and see everybody else in the room and basically torment the rest of the class from the front because it was Coco the clown in the front row. So that didn't work, and I had to move them then maybe to the back, and what I needed to do was then move my proximity around the room rather than let them be the center of attention. And again, I had to learn my children, I had to learn what resources I had. There will be expectations during testing, the desks get moved so that they're in testing conditions. That is okay, but you've got to set up a place where it is conducive for learning. And what goes hand in hand with that then is how you manage that class. So if you are intentionally setting up your students in groups to work, what do rules or what's the routines for doing that? What is the talking expectations? How are you going to keep them organized, orderly, focused, on task? I love this idea of a social contract because if you get the children to buy into making the rules, they're going to stick by them and follow them. And as soon as their friend isn't doing it, they're going to be like, this, John's talking, do something about it. And that is because they wanted peace to learn, okay? And they actually are very routine orientated, very driven and motivated to get the job done. And so if they've had buy-in in creating it, and they sign off on it, they're much more likely to uphold it, and they certainly will throw shade at their friends when they are not upholding the contract. So, Pat, what's the secret sauce to being a successful teacher here in
And
the
the
U.S.?
secret sauce is real simple. Is you got to build a relationship with kids. And that doesn't mean you just say hello. That means you got to learn their story. Have you ever heard somebody say everybody's got a story?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a story. I grew up with a mother and a father my father became very ill at an early age, 42 years old. So basically I watched my mother work 3 jobs and so I could go to school and I had to work too. And now my grandchildren, all they want is to be me. If you got $40, I put gas in my car. And so we're working on those values. But the student-teacher relationship is absolutely important. Now you're going to feel an urgency to teach the curriculum. No offense, there are no curriculum facilitators here. That you will, when your school system on board, you'll have it, and it's their job to help you know what to teach when, okay? But let me tell you, do not forsake the first 2 weeks of school. You need to teach relationships, and you need to develop relationships. In other words, ask kids, what's your favorite song? Have you got a favorite song? What's going on in our country now? Older kids, I'd love to hear their explanation. But learn their story. So when I look at this table, I can say single parent, lives with a grandmother, 2-parent home. So I know what they need. It's very, very important that I'm right, I'm sorry. You got to learn their names and their personalities. You won't like all their music, I can tell you that right now. That's just, I have to go back to the old music. But if they like it, it's good. But you just standing at the door, greeting them as they come in, makes a big difference. But let me tell you this, you know when it really starts, you know when building relationships really starts? When you park your car in the parking lot and you turn it off and you get out of the car. And everybody you meet from there all the way to the classroom, that's building relationships. And they'll get to where they'll meet you at the car and walk you in, telling you things about Shirley, your life. So it's very, very important. And a long time ago, I used to say for many years, students will work for somebody before they will work for something. Now they love pizza, they'll work for pizza. Pizza's temporary. You gotta build the relationship. So they want to work for somebody that they respect. And I think Amy did a good job. The kids in America don't automatically respect you because you're a teacher. And where you come from, you may get a lot more respect. That doesn't mean they won't give it to you. They will give it to you. You just have to earn it. They have to know that when they talk to you, you're a safe space. I can talk to you. You're not going to fuss at me. You're not, I mean, you may have to fuss at me sometime, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit, about how to handle those challenging kinds of conversations. So the first 2 weeks of school, don't make it, I mean, the other thing, high school people, you're going to be really shocked at what our high school students look like. They come to school in jeans with holes in them, and they got the shirt, and everybody's got a hoodie with their hood up. And you got to take the hood off. So don't make assumptions that because they're dressed that way, they aren't a good student. That's just the norm. That's just the norm. But I wanted to tell you, I wanted to warn you because some of my teachers have got cardiac arrest when they first saw their students. So, but
It goes exactly the same way in your classroom. Getting your kids to do stuff like this will be incredibly awkward to start, especially if you're talking about those teenagers, 5th grade upwards of like 14, 15. They're going to say, oh, this is embarrassing, or I have nothing to share. You might even find that little, should I pass, goes around the whole group before someone's brave enough to step up. But if you develop that culture and model it yourself, you will be shocked at how quickly they'll come around, they'll realize that this is just standard practice in your classroom, and you as the educator are learning so much about your students by just doing that. And that's how you tap into those difficult kids. That's how you get onto this next part of setting up great classroom management. You cannot set the rules and the routines in your class until you know how every single student ticks and functions. You're going to learn the one that walks in late, gets very little sleep, has the story to tell, and you're going to find them ways to reach them. Because perhaps in an exercise like this, you learn that they're really into shoes. I'm speaking from first-hand experience. I am a white Caucasian lady, and I have absolutely no experience with African American boys. And I'm ashamed to tell you that for the first 6 to 8 weeks of being here in the United States, I think I've all told you that I was an international teacher too. I'm originally from Ireland. But in my first 6 to 8 weeks, I completely lost the point of how to reach them. And they were running rings around me in my classroom. It got to breaking point when one of them put his hands on me and he nipped me. He left me black and blew up my arm. And I was embarrassed because I had been a teacher for 5 years in my home country. And you know what I was doing wrong? I was saying it's my way. It's my way or the highway. You conform with me. And I didn't build a relationship with them, and I didn't take time to tap into what interested them. I just wanted to teach. But got to rock bottom, and I had a few conversations with other teachers, and they were like, do you really know anything about those boys? Do you know what they do when they leave your classroom? Do you know what they do on the weekends? No. So I started to observe, I started to learn, I started to watch them. And I quickly realized basketball, big deal here in the United States. Never have played it or seen it in my life before. Northern Irish people don't really excel at that sport. And you can certainly see by me, I'm probably not the best basketball player on the planet. But I thought, I'm going to learn how to play basketball. And I'm gonna get out there. And I realized it's a whole culture where they buy the shoes and then they follow the celebrities online who have the latest shoes out. And I went out at recess with them. I got a ball. Still to this day, I'm terrible. I have terrible coordination. But they thought this was cool. And I commented on their shoes. Like the shoes today. They used to come in after recess and go down to the back and like wipe off their shoes because they're brand new and they did not want them dirty. And I realized that's not something to think as a negative thing. That's something to really channel. Then I went one weekend to one of their games. Contacted their parent, went to the game, hung out. It transformed my classroom because I got to know them. And by the end of that year, I was doing pretty darn all right with those kids. And I was cool. And like Pat said, they'd meet me at my car and come on in with me. Now, I'm not perfect, but I had to take a reality check and realize that until I had done that, none of my management was going to work. Because they didn't want to fix their mindset to go to my ideas, but me as the adult and the educator in the room had to go to theirs. And so ultimately, if you can channel that with your students too and not just assume they're not listening to you, or like Pat said, they're wearing their pajamas to school, they must be horrible in school. If you don't assume those things and you open your mind, you'll start to create this environment where these kids will want to tell you what's going on and will want to learn from you. You'll have what we call positive learning experience. Don't forget that sometimes you are the only positive experience and person that speaks to those kids. Some of these children come from homes where mom left the house 2 hours before they even got out of bed to work her second job or third job. And maybe they haven't seen an adult until they got to you, and perhaps they helped their little sister get out of school as well. So they're tired when they get to you and all they want to do is slump down and sleep. Maybe check in with them, see how they're doing. Because ultimately that's going to facilitate this better behavior. Where you seem safe and clear. Where your expectations, they know what they expect when they come to your class. You're a positive person. So they're not uncertain about their day at school because they know that you are very certain. And you are very... And so ultimately then, students will feel a little more responsible. That's when they start to feel a little more independent. If they like you, they're going to show off a little bit to you of what they can do, right? And then the other side of this is if your class is running well and all chaos is not breaking out, you're probably much happier at your job. Don't we all want to go to work and have an easy life? Yeah, we don't want to have to deal with the 15 behaviors every single day. It will reduce your stress ultimately if you are embracing of these students within you. You will notice there are so many diverse learners and styles and abilities. Not everyone gets the same help from home. Some parents are all in and kids are doing extra worksheets at night. And some kids have never picked up a book in their entire life outside of school and are on a computer from the minute they leave till bedtime. You have to be able to reach both equally without making one or the other more or less. And then by doing so, you're going to foster this emotional and social development where these kids really just feel safe and want to come to school. Obviously, coupled with this, you want to make engaging lesson plans. I just want to say it out loud that you may have to change the way that you have been planning your lessons for the last however many years. Hopefully you will get a mentor, somebody to guide you when you get to your school. I really hope you'll not just be asked next week to write a whole new lesson plan without any guidance, but ask questions. It isn't just lecture style here in the US. That just generally doesn't work. Small groups, technology integration. Don't just start doing things the way you've been doing it because that's always the way you've done it. Okay? Be open-minded enough to say, well, I haven't really worked in small groups before. That's a bit scary. Be open to that. You might just find that your kids will learn even better or in a new way. They're quite active, they like to move a lot, but you're going to want to make sure that these lesson plans are pretty important. And be proactive, not reactive. I think that maybe goes without saying. But if you envisage it being a problem, or you see that it's gonna go down a negative path, try to get ahead of it. That's why we talk about setting clear expectations, why we say try to create engaging lessons. Many of you are going to be taking a pre-standard curriculum that's within the school district and adopting it to be your own. Please do not open that book 5 minutes before you teach that lesson and that's the first time you've ever seen it. Come on. Take it home the night before, read it, and make it yours. Because if you're not prepared, it is never going to come across to the students as anything but chaos. Okay? That is the downside to some of these prescriptive curriculums that the country has adopted right now. Many teachers are just pulling the book out on the fly 5 minutes before and saying, yep, we're on lesson 10 today, let's go. All right? That's not going to do anything for your students. Positive reinforcement and be adaptive. Pass.
One of the things that I find that it's really hard for our international teachers to do is to ask for help. I've had several teachers say to me, where I come from, we don't go to the principal or the administrator and ask them about problems in the classroom. Well, it's totally different in this environment. It's good to ask for help. And you've got coaches, and I love it when my people say, Pat, if you don't come help me with this kid, I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, I mean, he's pressed every button I've got and stomped on him twice, and I need some help. And so that's what we're there for. That's why we're there, is to help you with those things. But the one thing that you'll probably get when you get to your school is a buddy teacher. Now, this is the person that knows how you go about getting your supplies, what the principal really does when you send somebody to the office, what the teachers at your grade level, what they've been doing. They talk about they're there to do things. You need a buddy teacher that's there at the school. Doesn't mean you have to hang out on the weekend, but usually it ends up being a friendship that goes even outside. But you need that buddy teacher that can provide that information for you. Because people do different things in different ways, and that's one of the great things about what I do, is I go into so many schools, and I see so many ways that people do and do not do things. So it's important for you to have a mindset. If you don't remember anything else I say today, well, I hope you do. But if you don't, I want you to remember this. Your classroom is your kingdom, okay? You're not going to change politics at the presidential level. You're not going to change politics in the local level. Don't get all caught up into that. You're not going to be, listen, sometimes you'll run into a teacher and no, they don't like anything. Principal stinks. We haven't had any new stuff in forever. You got to get away from toxic situations. Because it's like, I know you've heard this example, it's like a frog sitting in a frying pan with get boiling water. The frog will sit there and you slowly heat the water up and he just adapts to the heat of the water until, guess what? Lights out for the frog. And that you don't want to reach that point. There's a lot of stress. You just learn to go to the grocery store with that. And doing all that, but you got to ask for help. So if you don't get a buddy teacher, you be sure and ask for one. But most schools have a buddy teacher, and then we're there, and we can help you with that if you need it. And
So, we've talked about setting up a classroom environment, making sure your classroom looks and feels the way you want it to look and feel. Desk arrangements, booth lighting, reading corners, all of those things. We've talked about how important and intentional it is to build those relationships with students, get to know them. Then take a moment to set up your classroom management plan and intentionally teach that. Social contracts, rules, responsibilities. I'll say again what Pat has said, and I've never felt this as much as I felt it when I arrived. They're going to want you to be jumping in day one to teaching curriculum. And I personally feel that's where I went wrong. Because I didn't stop and get to know them and talk to them and set up my expectations for them. And so they never knew them. And like I said, kids will make their own rules up if you don't make them with them or for them. Okay? So yes, of course you want to be respectful of what you're being asked, but try to find at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes after lunch, before recess, before the end of the day, to just set up the norms of your classroom. And that's what we're talking about right here. Don't just let them all walk in and in a hurry to get started. Just say, everybody sit down and get going. If you want them in assigned seats, take 10 minutes and put them in assigned seats. That's okay. Because then, as you learn where they are, oh, these guys work okay together. We can let them shuffle about a bit. Because I recognize, well, these two right here, they don't ever stop talking. They're just going on and on. We got to separate them. One over there and one over here. Okay, you very quickly learn what will and will not work. And so collaboratively doing it, in my experience, was the best way I ever found. If you let the children have a stake in it, they're much more willing to uphold it. I've said that, I'll say it again. That will help them give ownership towards it, and then therefore, like I said, pull out their brains when they're not leaving. Now, there's two very different processes in setting up your classroom management. Don't get them confused. There are rules, straightforward rules that you want kids to obey, like respect each other, respect yourself. That is a rule. Listen to the teacher when she's talking or he's talking. Listen to your peers when they're sharing. That is a rule. That is slightly different from a procedure. It is equally important that you set up procedures. What do I mean by that? It is going to be 100% inevitable that someone in your classroom needs the bathroom. Probably 15 times a day. If you do not set up the procedure, you're going to find yourself watching John and James just get up whenever they want and move towards the bathroom. So what do you want to happen in that situation? Is it a signal so that they don't interrupt your learning? Is it a log where they sign in and they sign out? That happens and works pretty well in middle and high school. Another situation that you middle and high school folks will have to come up with is a procedure for cell phones. Now, Pat shared last week that the legislature is changing, and hopefully by January, cell phones will be completely out of classrooms in North Carolina. But until then, what are you going to do to make sure that the procedures in place about cell phones? The best one I ever saw was, you know those shoe holders that come on, like you can put on the back of a door, they're clear pockets? When you walk into the room, drop it in there, yours is number one, pick it up on the way out. You know why that works? Because they can see their cell phone the entire time you're teaching, because teenagers don't want to part with their phone. I've seen other teachers try to put them in baskets and buckets and things like that. Sometimes you run into the issue of they can't see their phone, they think you're going to steal their phone, there are lots of silly things like that. But that procedure worked really well. And you know who also put theirs in there? The teacher. Why? Modeling the example, the children were more willing to follow and do the same thing. Teacher's phone's in there, my phone's in there. We all get it. 5 minutes before the end of the lesson, at the end of the lesson, whatever you set up. It's a procedure. Elementary school teachers, sharpening pencils, get ready. Kids want to sharpen their pencil 55 times every single day.
When they don't have a pencil.
Or they don't have them. All right? So again, what's your procedure for that? It drove me crazy. So I did not want pencils sharpened through the day. So I set up a basket of sharpened pencils and a basket that needed to be sharpened. The procedure was, you need a new one, go take sharpened one, your one is finished, you've lost one, put it in the basket. It was, instead of in the electric sharpener 50 times a day. It's up to you, right? Maybe that noise doesn't bother you, that's okay. But it will help you feel calmer and more kind of put together if you know exactly where homework is supposed to go, or assignments are supposed to be turned in, or a child missed a day at school and they have to get the work to catch up. Where is that work? Because if they don't know, they're going to ask you and bother you for it. And guess what? You have 20 other students to do the rest. It's the same as when a kid comes into the classroom for the first time. Middle and high schoolers, they move around all the time. Is there something on the board that they know when they walk into your room, they gotta go out that first, they gotta sit down, they gotta unpack, they gotta start this until you are ready to start teaching them. Because if there's not, what are they gonna do? Talk. Get out their phones. Put their music on. Distract each other. You know what's gonna be harder for you? Getting the lesson started. It's going to be lots and lots and lots of wasted time because you're trying to manage your class. So, take time to set up both. Rules. Please don't be a teacher that has 500 rules down the side of a board. About 5 or 6 will be enough. Get your kids' input in those. Go over them as often as you need to. My kids used to make fun of me because after about 3 months of going over those every day, they were like, we get it. And I used to say, but do you? Because yesterday, so-and-so wasn't doing this behavior. Okay? Kids need that repetition. So just at your tables, take a moment to look at all of these rules and procedures and talk about them. Tell me which ones are rules, which ones are procedures. Can you identify the difference between the two? And if you're a fast finisher, can you think of a couple more that would fit into the pathway of a rule and a procedure? You don't need to write anything down. Just have a conversation with your tables. We'll come back together in a minute or two. Go through each one, and if it's a rule, tell me it's a rule. If it's a procedure, tell me it's a procedure, okay? So show kindness to others. Rule. That's a rule, okay? Something you would want to expect the behavior in your room. Walk in a straight, single file line in the hallway with voices off. Procedure. That's a procedure. And again, you'll very quickly learn the culture of your school. You might realize your principal really wants you to be quiet in the hallway. If that's true, then you need to set up a procedure for that, or there'll be more work for you with you. Treat property and personal space with respect. Sharpen pencils before the lesson begins, or wait until after instruction begins. Listen to others. Use the silent hand signal to request a bathroom break and wait for a nod from the teacher. Follow directions. Stay focused. During small group instruction, ask 3 classmates for help before coming to the teacher. Enter the classroom, unpack your things, begin the morning task at your desk. Right? Some common courtesies in school. The procedures are equally important because you want to minimize the effort you have to put in as the educator and continuing to tell them how you want these things done. Because one thing I learned about children is they will definitely ask, and if one asks, 4 ask. Or ask 10. And so if you really want your life to be a little bit easier, get some of these procedures set in place.
And make sure that you display them. Don't think they can hold it to memory. Because even after the weekend, you can almost start over again on them. They just seem to forget it. But displaying the procedures are very important. Because you get, one thing I used to do was I'd have it displayed when you didn't follow it, we could just point at it, we could say this is what we need to do. But you gotta model it, you gotta reteach it when necessary. First 2 weeks of school for middle and high school folks, I just want to say, just don't make assumptions. Go in and fix, like I said, your classroom is your classroom, okay? And you need to teach the same rules that you would be teaching if you taught kindergarten. You just don't use kindergarten lesson. Language, but you teach just like you would be teaching anybody. Because don't assume they know it. And they don't, and you can ask them to define respect. That's interesting, you should do that. The social contract takes care of that. That's why I think that's so important at the end of the school year. But we do just want to say, don't assume that they already know what walking in a straight line in the hall means. Of course, you don't do that in high school much anymore, but don't assume, just teach the language to you.
And really, balance is key. Like everything we've talked about today, all we're trying to encourage you to do is to start that year out right and find balance. You're coming with a wealth of knowledge of ways that worked. You are all successful educators. I'm sure you all ran very functional classrooms. There's no reason to think that you wouldn't do the same here, but try to be observant and look to the differences and see maybe, one thing I will ask you to advocate for yourselves, if your principal allows you to go watch another teacher, I highly, highly recommend that. Preferably a teacher with a little experience who's been here for a while, because you'll very quickly pick up those little nuances of the culture, things that are working well there, why their kids are maybe listening to them and they're not listening to you. I found that a very, very useful strategy, back to the buddy teacher. If there's an opportunity during some planning or something to do that, even just for one period or one lesson, I would absolutely recommend that you do that, because you want to create a little community, okay? You want to make it so that your students are excited to come to your class, because they truly believe you are championing them, you are in their corner, you truly care about their learning and their ability and their reading. And so try and find that balance of being fun, expressing joy without being too overfamiliar and too laissez-faire. Try to find that middle ground where they really can respect you, but really thrive in your class too, because you're cool, okay? Or whatever the terminology that cool kids use these days. So thank you very much for listening to us this afternoon.